Mess it up.
All right. Here we go. I'm your gracious host, Dr. Juice. And we back in the building. I got the professor as my co-pilot today. And we're going to be navigating you through the Urban Matters Media Group introduction. And you can see today our question is about our city. We got some concern about our city. Me and the professor and I, we've been kind of going back and forth, bouncing ideas and brainstorming and we've been in our little think tank sessions and we're just trying to figure out is the foundational Black American population that's in the city of Lake Wales, the citizens, are we engaging citizens and are we engaging our community in Lake Wales? And can they create their own options without all the time so much depending on religious dependency being the answer and the go-to all the time? And is prayer the only option for every community problem versus every community solution? So we got our good professor. He said he's gonna lecture us a little bit on that today about uh, community engagement. As y'all all know, that engagement can come in many forms and fashions. Engagement can come in employee engagement in the workplace. You can come from community engagement, your family engagement, and when you engage people, you gotta have some type of solution in mind that we're going to get some result and some resolve from coming up with some answers, and instead of that same output, the same outlook, the same solution, the same conclusions. And like I say, the professor and I, we go back and forth a lot. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't, right, professor? But at the same time, one thing we do have in common, we're both from the same part of town, and we are Black men that are trying to empower ourselves and trying to enrich ourselves into this new innovative this innovation when it comes to digital transformation, that we gotta have that on our side. And I think a lot of our folks are trying to ignore it. They're trying to maneuver around it, and they really don't want to deal with it, and they don't want to implement it into their communities. But this is why we are failing. This is why we're about to fail another generation, as if my generation before me failed us in that fashion. And I'm not saying this to be mean. I'm not saying this, but we got to deal with the facts at some point in time in our community. Would you agree, Professor? So we're going to let my professor come in and chime in on that a little bit and kind of give us a broad outlook on how how can we implement this digital transformation in our everyday life and be able to benefit and enrich. That's the key word, enrich ourselves, Professor. Okay? Now we don't need to hear no Negro babble, Professor. We don't want to hear that Negro babble. We want facts. Be honest with us. Okay? All right,
How
let's chop it up.
how you doing, Dr. Juice?
Pretty good, pretty good.
I'm always
Happy
so
Sunday.
happy Sunday to you. Always happy to do my part to contribute. You know, you're going to the old people and asking for guidance and that sort of thing. But how dare you? How dare you accuse me of Negro babble? Even, even though I am capable, but we don't want to start out. We don't want to start out disagreeing off the rip. But allow me just to kind of give you a little history. You always like for me to talk about history,
Yes, sir.
and as you well know, when we talk about digital transformation, I'm teaching digital transformation in two different countries now, and to be able to compare that with what I see in my hometown, really allows me to give you some rich analysis on where I believe we need to go. But before I do that, let me give you a little history. Let me give you a little history as to why in your community uh, citizens are approaching the problem with prayer, right? They're approaching the problem with prayer because that's all they know. And what do I mean by that? So when you look at, again, from a historical perspective, they were standing on the street where they admitted that they sold ownership for integration. I'll give them credit for that. In that process, let me explain what happened. Along with giving up ownership for integration, what also occurred during that time, and you can Google this, you don't have to listen to me. During integration, it was the big Jesus movement that came out of California. And the Jesus movement spread it all across the nation. Look it up. 1970, big Jesus movement. And it affected all the communities. Here's another occurrence that was taking place at the same time that the Jesus movement was taking place. They shut down the only black higher level of education in Lake Wales, which was Roosevelt.
Mm.
Roosevelt, you want history, Roosevelt was created by President Roosevelt.
Yes.
The purpose of Roosevelt, and you be real clear this was mandated as federal law. The purpose of Roosevelt was to preserve the history and culture of the black community in Lake Wales. You look it up. The educational institution for black people in Lake Wales started by the church. They were innovative. They got out there and they had bake sales. They sold fish. They were entrepreneurs. When President Roosevelt, when he visited Lake Wales, and you can go to the public library in Lake Wales right now, they got a great big picture with President Roosevelt when he visited Lake Wales. But they never tell you that he was so impressed. He was so impressed with the black community and the efforts and the innovation and the fact that they raised their own money and they bought that land that Roosevelt sat on right now by being entrepreneurs, by being innovative. He made it federal law. He built that school with federal money. So when they shut down Roosevelt in 1970, they made you forget about it. You don't even sell it. You don't even, half the people now your age don't even know none of the teachers. You know nothing about Roosevelt. They closed it down. You know nothing about it. Well, that was by design. So if that was a black institution and you had all of these highly educated black people who were doing wonderful things in Lake Wales, you had all those businesses down on Lincoln Avenue. So when you shut the school down, you cut black education. You took people who were a part of the community who helped build those businesses that you don't see anymore. So what was you left with? You was left with the Jesus movement. So for the last 5 decades, you don't know how to do nothing else but pray. Because you haven't had a black institution there for 5 decades. The teachers who were there, when they got rid of those teachers, they had to move somewhere else. The ones that didn't die off, they had to move somewhere else to make a living. Because black education in Lake Wales went away in 1970. You had people like, you ask some of your peers, do they know Mr. Brody? Do they know Mr. Seabrook,
Mm-hmm.
Miss Isles, all those great intellectual teachers that we had in Lake Wells? You don't even honor them anymore. I've watched Lake Wells since 2017.
So let me ask you a question. Let me just clarify some information because you're losing me a little bit here. So you're saying that the black church was or had the black church had entrepreneurial spirit back in those 70s and 80s, and they
You
were
want
involved in community projects as far as business ownership and different fundamental ways of creating revenue for the communities? And why do we not see that? And I know you explained it, you kind of breaking it down why we don't see that now. But what took place? Some type of transformation took place back in between the 70s and you say 50-year period, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you respond to that, Professor?
Well, Dr. Juice, one thing that you've learned about me since you've been dealing with me is the fact that I keep receipts. I keep receipts. And I'm going to pull this up and I'm going to read it. I'll read it to you.
Well, do you want to pull that up and share it with us, Professor?
Yeah, sure. I'll put it on. I'll read it. I have it right here. Here we go. I'll just put this part on the screen because we need to let it be captured on record. So I'll have no problem with doing that. Right. Here we go. You might find this interesting. Okay. How do I share my screen on this?
Let me see. I should be able to. You should be able to share it, Professor. Let me see. Let's see if I can give you screen sharing capabilities. Let me see. Hold on. Professor. Let's see.
I can read it to you if you want me to, but I don't see screen share on this right here. What is it?
It should be at the bottom down here. You see at the bottom where you see your microphone, your video, and you
I
have
have
an
it.
arrow.
I have it. Sorry about that.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
If it was a snake, I'd be dead by now. Okay, here we go. Can you see that?
Let's blow it up. Let's see here. And you sharing it, right?
Yes, sir.
Let me see.
I
We
can
don't
stop
see
it.
it.
Let me look like I'll stop it and reshare. Hold on. I just stopped it and I'm going to reshare.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Screen number 2. I'm going to allow that. How's that? Because I see it.
Share the screen. Show on screen. Okay, here we go.
There you go. So let's take a look at that.
Okay.
You want some history, Dr. Juice? I got history for you. So back in 1935, the United States had a work progress administration because this was right after the Depression. My daddy had moved to Lake Wells in 1925 because there was a depression. You couldn't pick cotton in Alabama. So by the time 1935 came along, this was their stimulus during that time, right?
Right.
It talks about, right here, it says, the Work Progress Administration was an ambitious employment and infrastructure program. They're talking about, we had that subject here today, right? So this was President Roosevelt. He was doing the years of the Great Depression. And he was going all over the country. He stopped in Lake Wells. You go to the library, you see his picture with the train. So this was probably the first and only effort that the federal government came in and tried to help black people in Lake Wells right here in 1935. This goes all the way back to 1935. So it was started by a preacher by the name of Reverend William Smith and Reverend Wesley Fasher. And they worked together. Here you see, look at the ladies that they talk about. I bet you nobody knows these people's names. You don't even celebrate your ancestors. Miss Fannie Meeks, Bastard. Miss Mamie Roper, Marriage. Miss Sophia Miller. Miss Lily Brown Hall. They gave barbecue and dance to help finance the construction of the first permanent school building, which was completed in the early 20s. That's your history. That's your Black history. Did you know that, Dr. Juice?
Me and you have discussed this previously, but I should have gotten more in depth and researched it a little bit further. And this is very interesting.
Dr. Juice, listen to this. Roosevelt High School began as a one-teacher school in the First Institutional Baptist Church in 1917. 8 years before my dad showed up.
Wow.
That's Black history in Lake Wales. So my point is, when you took that Black educational institution out of your community, that's where it fell down. People don't have any organizational skills. They don't know better. Because again, during the Jesus movement in 1970, at the same time, you took away Black education. That's when you saw the decline in businesses. So today, you can't even those people that were standing out there, you couldn't buy a bottle. There was not one store on that street that you could go and buy in it. The only way you've been able to get a bottle of water out there, somebody would have had to bring it.
Wow.
So again, you've taken a religion. I asked you the other day, I asked you in our last conference, and I hope I'll ask you again. Name your religion that was used to oppress Black people other than Christianity. Name one. Crickets. So you haven't found. Yeah, you haven't. So last time we talked, I asked you to go do homework. Go find me a religion outside of Christianity that was used to oppress Black people. Name me one. There you go. Crickets again.
Wow.
So
crickets.
Right. So now when you're having all these community issues, you have really lost your boys that's supposed to be training. The only thing that I can say about that right now is that the government, I do business in Alabama. I was dealing with some government officials last week. Do you know, in terms of the Black community, the government have written off everybody above third grade. They've written you off from an educational perspective. Because in order for you as a Black community to survive, you got to be part of this digital transformation to function. So since we've been behind the whole time, and we're way behind now, and we don't know how to leverage technology into anything that we do, the government wrote you off. You gotta be. They're looking at your grandchildren. They're not looking at you.
And Professor, and that's what I just been explaining to a few guys I was, talking with and having a discussion with earlier. And, it always leads back to politics when we get into these discussions. But I asked them, I say, man, how are we going to be able to look our next generation, my grandkids and all of my kids' generation, in the face, knowing that we still are voting and making the same mindless mistakes when it comes to a political solution, a political agenda, I told these gentlemen, you don't vote just because you want to vote and for exercise. You want to vote because you want something tangible from your government. You want your government to present you with some type of tangible solution, such as you're speaking of the digital transformation age. And I think that digital transformation age is fairly new, where we can kind of get in on the beginning stages of it and try to implement something in our community so that we can master something, so we can call something our own. We always allow everybody to come into our community, different culture vultures, and hijack everything we have, everything we've ever invented. Soul food, the cotton gin. We've invented so many countless inventions, but we never get the credit for it, and we never get the enrichment from it. So my question is, how can we benefit and how can we enrich ourselves with this digital transformation you speak so highly of?
Black people are going to have to catch up over time. You're already behind. You know,
Right.
I teach internationally, so
Right.
you know, every week, you know, I'm looking at what other cultures are doing.
Right.
I'm
So
looking at what other
how can we educate ourselves in an accelerated fashion to where we can at least compete on a level playing field? I know we may not be on top of our game, but if we don't do something, we're going to be roadkill on the digital transformation highway. So how do we avoid being roadkill at this point in time?
you know, there'll be a very small percentage of those above third grade, and they're going to have to be willing to change or want to learn. But I pretty much have the same attitude as the government. I want to start with the babies, and the reason why I want to start with the babies is because they'll learn faster. So you got to understand, the government and your oppressors, they think long term. I learned this selling firewood. I'm gonna share this with you for a minute. When I first started selling firewood, I never understood why black people would only buy a small quantity of firewood. They would only buy enough to get them through the night, which was a $10 stack. White people, on the other hand, they wanted to buy a truckload of wood. They didn't want to buy no $10 stack. And I never could understand that. So I went to a Georgia economist, Dr. Donald Radishak. And I asked Dr. Radishak, I explained my case to him. And you know what he said, Juice? He said the reason for that is that because of our experience as black people of being oppressed, we think and we buy in increments because of our limited resources versus our oppressor. They have the ability to think long term. So when they bought a truckload, they might not have burnt all the wood that night, but it cost them less because they bought it in a pickup truck and they had it on hand. Versus the black people, every time it got cold, they were trying to scramble around and buy the $10 sticks. And I understand why they didn't have long-term money, because why would when you think about black people economic condition and how tight things are, why would you buy a truckload of wood to sit there when you can't eat wood? So what I'm saying is, we have to understand that about ourselves and then try and make effort to change that. How do we change that? I'll ask you a question, Dr. Juice. They'll get mad at me if I'm gonna let you answer. So when you observe that activity, when you observe the prayer, did you see any critical thinking taking place? Are you sure?
Absolutely sure.
Are you sure now? I don't want to be the one. I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to make you answer the question.
What was that question that you had asked earlier? You said something about you say how is this going to?
Yeah, I got it. So when you talk about social change, when you start talking about community engagement and impact, meaningful impact, right? What does meaningful impact looks like? What you know?
Yeah, that was it. Impact. How
What's
is that going? Yeah. Okay.
how's it gonna happen? So what I'm saying is, so you look at, when you want to do analysis, I'm an analyst. So when you look at an event, right? When you look at an event where people are claiming to make social change, then you have to ask the question, what is the meaningful impact? Now you got to go back to the data. Only the data can tell you meaningful impact. I'll start asking questions. Okay, so meaningful impact. How many people were there? What what was discussed? How did you take that data and then strategically implement a plan? And I'm asking you, did prayer do that?
Absolutely.
No. So
No.
right. So I ask you another question. So if you shut down the black school in 1970, okay? So between 1970 and up until now, can you please tell me where were people in your community learn how to critically think? Since you said they wasn't critically thinking when they praying. So who's teaching? Who's teaching critical thinking? Is Here's another question for you, Juice.
I'm gonna tell you, in our community, you really don't even get an idea of what critical thinking is and how to implement critical thinking until you get into the uh, uh, after graduate school, level, the higher education levels. That's when you really get a sound approach or a sound idea of what critical thinking is.
So here's what I'm saying, and here's where I oppose that, right? So they're saying that,
From
okay,
my experience now.
I'm an academic. I'm an academic, okay? I'm a scientist. I'm a scientist. So I'm looking at this situation, right? I'm
Hmm.
looking at a situation where you're trying to solve a problem. Am I still right? So I got two choices of solving this problem. I can sit there and pray, or I can critically think of a solution. Which one do you want me to do?
I want to come up with some critical thinking solutions. Absolutely. So we
But if
ain't got to keep going through this over and over again because that's the elephant that's in the room. Nobody ever likes to admit that prayer is good, but it only leads you to more prayer.
here's
I
another
can't
question.
knock people. I can't knock people for praying,
No, I'm
but
comparing
like you
you.
say, what? Right? Critical
I'm,
thinking. Absolutely.
I'm having a scientific discussion. This is not emotional. This is not
Absolutely.
personal. I'm asking you scientific questions. I'm
Absolutely.
looking to solve a problem. All right.
Absolutely.
It's like
Absolutely.
like your car won't start. I'm gonna give you a basic example. Your car won't start. Then you ask the question why. It could be many things. You might not have gas in it. It could be your battery, be your alternator. I'm not even a mechanic, and I know that.
Correct.
So I'm trying to solve the problem. I'm trying to crank the car. So do I sit there, Juice, and pray that your car will start, or do I critically think and go through a process of elimination to figure out whether it's the gas, whether it's the starter,
Hmm.
the oil? You see the difference? Or so they doing the same thing. They're sitting, so based on what I saw, in terms of the mentality that I saw, your car won't start, so they just gonna gather around your car and pray until it starts.
All right. Yeah, I understand now. You really broke it down to me. You really enlightened me on that, Daddy.
They did it's the same thing. To me, I mean, Help me understand better. If I'm not explaining this, I try to put things in Peter Rabbit language. But they all gathered around your car and said, Lord Jesus, we pray that Juice car would start.
So you're basically telling me you're basically explaining to me like if I had a mechanical problem with my car, I probably want to critical thinking for me to go seek out a mechanic versus seeking out my pastor or my preacher,
Or at least troubleshoot.
or at least troubleshoot it. Absolutely, that makes perfect
Or
sense.
I give you this so that church people won't get mad at me. You can sit there and pray first and then go to Lord, help me troubleshoot this car. I would go along.
Exactly. Wow.
But to sit there for
Carry
30 minutes,
on.
to sit there for 30 minutes and pray that your car will start, that don't make sense to me, Dr. Juice. So if you're approaching these community challenges and issues the same way, gather around your car praying that it start, I don't see how you can start. I don't see how you can solve anything. I don't see how you can have meaningful impact in your community approaching problems that way. I don't see it. So what I would recommend, you got to find a way to get people to start thinking in terms of critical thinking. Critical thinking. And critical thinking, it allows you to analyze, it allows you to investigate and explore what the possibilities are. You know, were you able to discover any?
Wow.
What were the possibilities in solving that problem? Were you able to discover? How were you? How was I just don't understand the meaningful impact. Now, if you say that we all got together, we fellowship, we prayed, and we felt better, we felt real good about that. Well, I mean, if you want to consider that as a meaningful impact, that don't solve no problem other than making you feel good. If you had a problem feeling good, well, now you feel good. How about that? I'm going to shut this screen down here for a minute. You might
Yeah,
want me
shit,
to
that's
show
great.
something else.
Uh-huh.
All right. Because, I got plenty of receipts. So how do you, well, before I say how do you, again, that's your community down there, so I ask you another question because you watch these people. I watch them too, but I'm going to ask you. So have you seen any evidence of critical thinking when you see these church programs, when you hear these people do what they call prayer and all this kind of stuff? Can you point out to me critical thinking? Just
I'm from this community, professor, and this has been an ongoing struggle for me as a business owner. I try to get folks in my community to critically think about business and entrepreneurship. And it's like I'm speaking in Chinese or something because they just really don't get it. And they want to keep beating their heads against the wall, doing the same things over and wondering why our community is impoverished. Or they want to think that their open enemy, which is Zaddy, can help them possibly fix the problems and enrich their communities. And a lot of them are politically ignorant. They vote against their best interests. They vote for their own demise through their votes. And I just don't see the critical thinking abilities here in my community. I mean, I may can tell you two or three, but then again, they may feel like it's my opinion. But we're not, it's not rocket science. You know what a critical thinker is. A critical thinker is somebody who investigates and research things from their perspective on their own, and they don't need any type of cheerleading or any type of influence to do that. They just a critical thinker asks questions before they draw conclusions or before they believe somebody or listen to someone. They always like to ask questions and do hypotheses on different subject matter. And I'm the type of person, that's the type of person I am. You're not just going to get me to believe something because that's what everybody is saying and that's the trend of what's going on. No, I like to ask questions. So no, I don't see the critical thinking in my community on a broad level, on a broad scale. No, I don't.
So then, with you being a grassroots community leader that knows how to leverage technology, I've seen your numbers. Okay, you have the opportunity to teach that. We can teach that because when I look at how I'm always doing comparative analysis. So when I looked at those numbers, I see a group that was less than 50 people. But in less than 24 hours, this video gonna go to over 250 people. I already know what the numbers look like. So you're beginning to educate your community because Urban Matters Live Media is just what it is. It's a media, and in fact, it's the only media outlet that Black people have in your community. So if you can wing those, if they're not doing critical thinking in the church, maybe they'll develop an appetite for it. Maybe they'll develop an appetite for meaningful impact once they see that this prayer ain't gonna do nothing. And I hate to say this, it's gonna hurt me to say that. I think they quoted like 9 murders. Oh, it's gonna be more to come. I'm seeing
Absolutely.
this. I'm law enforcement in Alabama. I'm watching this stuff. I think Alabama is worse than Lake Wells, but I think that Lake Wells is headed to in the same direction, where now they have these foreign investors. See, this is why it's so important that we have what I call a world view. Your community needs a global impact so that they can plan for what's coming. See, in Alabama, they have these big auto part manufacturing companies coming in, Korean, okay, coming in like gangbusters. Then check this out. You got these places on the way to where nowhere in Alabama, the size of Waverly. Got a lot of communities like that. And in every one of those communities, they got a little local convenience store, I won't even call it that, where the Indians done bought them all up. And guess what? They got a Black woman back there cooking fried gizzards and fried chicken.
Wow.
With no salad, can't even buy coleslaw. But my point is, you have these other cultures who are quietly coming in and acquiring what you used to own.
Wow.
And selling you fried chicken and gizzards. That's happening right now.
Wow. It's a lot going on, Professor, man. Like I say, this Black media outlet here, Urban Matters Matter media group and live chat. We just want to keep everybody informed, man, and research material, research articles. I want to know if anybody came across this article, Professor. I think I sent it to you today. And this is the article. And I just want to know if anybody is paying attention to this type of stuff that's happening every day. And this is going to tie right into what our great professor right here is speaking of about digital transformation, how these cyber attacks are taking place all over the world. And this has been 3 days. I want to read some of this. Car dealerships across North America have faced major disruptions. CDK Global, a company that provides software for thousands of auto dealers in the US and Canada, was hit by back-to-back cyber attacks on Wednesday. That led to an outage that continued to impact many of their operations on Friday. For prospective car buyers, that means that delays at dealerships or vehicle orders written up by hand with no immediate end in sight. Here's what you need to know. So, right there, I'm going to just read that and just kind of chime in on that a little bit and have you chime in on that as well, Professor. But I was having a discussion with one of my constituents about a month or two ago, and it said that the auto industry was about to get ready to roll over as far as economically, and that that the auto industry was pretty much collapsing, and so I notice a pattern, and I may be wrong, but every time these companies and corporations get in financial trouble, you always see some type of cyber attack happen afterwards. And it's like, with that being said, sounds like a lot of people are going to get ripped off, is what it sounds like. Because one thing about, I noticed CDK, this software was kind of like the watchdogs for keeping all these auto dealerships in compliance when it came to financing and whatnot. So now it sounds like, hey, the gloves are off, and now we know that car prices and truck prices and automobile prices and dealerships have enormous prices already. So sounds like the consumer is really gonna suffer again from having a lack of knowledge when it comes to digital technology and transformation. You want to chime in on that, Professor?
Absolutely. Not only that, consumers are going to always get the bad end of that because the cost of remediating those issues will be passed on to them. The other thing that you have to worry about is that when you're talking about personal identifiable data, I gave a lecture on the very topic of the car dealership last week in Vietnam, where I teach MBA students. Okay, these are the students who will be working for American companies over there. Okay, the reason why the auto industry was hit so hard and it went up 15% of attacks is because all of the personal identifiable information that you can get out of that. And that's the type of information that can be sold on the dark web, highly probable information. So when you look at car buying and when you look at all of the data and personal information that it takes for you to buy a car, that data is very valuable to hackers, and that can be sold on the dark web very easily.
Absolutely. Information, absolutely. Man, it's like I say, we got a lot going on, man. It's a lot to unpack here, man, that's going on in America. Israel did another attack on the Gaza Strip area, and it's like Israel is giving a middle finger to our government, to our legislators. They've countless amount of times have asked Israel to stand down with their attacks on these innocent. And they always say, "Oh, we was going at one of the terrorist cells," but the ones that wind up dying is hundreds of civilians. So it's like, yeah, okay, bro. At this point, this pretty much is a clear case of genocide. You're killing more civilians than you are terrorists. I haven't yet to see maybe one or two terrorists they claim allegedly that they've caught or killed. And so it's a lot going on, man. I just, that's why I do these broadcasts, Professor, because our people are just, right now, they're so distracted by goofy stuff. We got a lot of goofy black leaders that claiming to be the leaders in the black community. Like, did you hear about Steve Harvey? And what's the other comedian name? He was on the Kings of Comedy. I can't never remember his name because he's not really funny. But they're coming out talking against black people receiving reparations. We finally got the government and a lot of these political officials talking about government and like calling out literally white supremacy. Now, you never ever heard of them speaking these words on media channels, on the white media. And so, because people like me, the grassroots black media, we've been pushing the effort, pushing the narrative, and now we have it backed up, of course, with facts, because now with technology and the internet, you have no excuse for being ignorant. And so, like I say, our people have no excuse, Professor, for not knowing and not wanting to learn this digital transformation. and how it can make an impact in the economics of their life, why would you not want that? Why would you want to continually put your head in the sand, keep ignoring these facts? I mean, it's saddening, man. And I'm listening. I'm at one point, man, I had ran my blood pressure up, man, trying to help black people. But now I understand that this message is not for everybody. And as they say, the creator, everybody is chosen. I mean, many are called, but few are chosen. And we just those chosen few, my good professor. And I'm gonna keep hashing away, and I'm gonna make sure my grandkids are in a better position. My kids are in a better position than I was. And I'm not saying, not putting any shade on our parents' generation, but I am saying that we turned the cheek we turned the other cheek too many times, and we've been passive aggressive too much, and our men have been butt broken, and we got a lot of women running around here now with this mammyism. It's like this mammyism is getting out of control. It's like they just want a pat on the back. They just want you did good, girl. You did good, boy. And people get offended when people call them nigga. You know what? When people call me nigga, I look at it as a challenge, because the white dominant society back in the days, they called you a boy when they knew they had control of you. But when they couldn't control you and they knew you was a strong buck that was going to buck the system, they called you a nigga, because, see, you was a threat. See, niggas are threats because niggas do things differently. Niggas walk differently. And niggas don't get offended when they get called that word, the N-word. We don't get offended by that. We don't get offended by that. That means you a strong man. If somebody calling you an N-word, that means you a threat to him. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Be a threat, man. Don't never be passive when somebody call you a boy. They treat you like a boy. And our women don't get the way where they treat you like a mammy. Because a mammy just want to just keep the dominant society happy.
That's
We want economics. Here at Urban Matters, we're about black economics, group economics. And that's what we're going to stay on until we get it. That's why I'm always pushing the reparations. See, a lot of people have a problem with reparations. Black people that look black, they ain't really black. So everybody who black don't mean that they black. See, because a lot of people can't qualify for reparations for the simple fact they're not American and they can't trace their lineage back to the 1800s. I've done it before. I've traced my ancestry roots back to the 1800s, early 1800s. My daughter even traced her roots back. So I know that we are originally a foundation of America. And those are the only people that's going to qualify for these reparations, because we got the government talking about it. We finally got the government addressing white supremacy. Don't say racism, call it what it is. It's white supremacy. See, white supremacy is an action. All our white folk, all our white friends are not white supremacists. I got a lot of friends that are white, but white supremacy is an action, not a person. Chime in on that, Professor.
Yeah, I kind of, in a way, hate to admit this, but I get more white support than I do black support.
Absolutely.
I got more, seriously, I got more white people support me. And then when they look at how my own community deals with me, I get even more white support.
Absolutely.
Now, let me say this. And this might be hard for a lot of folks to swallow, for black people. But religion is for lazy people. Did you hear
Absolutely. That? Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
When you
agree with you and believe that.
No, it's for lazy people, because think about it. All you gotta do is pray. What's the effort in that? What's the effort in that? Oh,
wow.
No.
That makes perfect sense.
The things that you just mentioned, listen to the things that you just mentioned. You talked about what? Research. You talked about investigation. You talked about exploring. You talked about reading. In the academic world, we call that rigor. We call that rigor. Rigor is hard work. You got to work. You got to think. You need energy to think. It takes watch this key word. It takes an effort. It takes an intentional effort. You ain't got to do none of that to breathe. All you got to do is pray about anything. You can pray, shout, jump. It don't take no effort. And here's the other thing with religion. They're only focused on one book. One book. They discard all the books other than that one book. So to me, how can you have a broad understanding of life? How can you have a broad understanding of how to approach a problem when you only read one book? I have tons of books. I have to. People pay me for what I know. Now, how do I imagine this, Juice? If there's a technical problem or challenge of any sort, how can I solve that with just one book? Even my consulting, even the books that I have behind me is not enough sometimes. I have to do research. I have to dig deep. I have to spend hours researching scientifically.
You put in work. You put in work.
If I was in religion, all I had to do was go watch the clown show on Sunday. You know, dance a little bit, throw some money in the plate. That ain't no different than going to the club. I got to pay at the door. I go to church, pay in the plate. What's the effort in that? There's no effort in having a party. I'm doing a comparative analysis. I'm an academic. Where is the work? You have to work to solve problems.
Yes, sir.
Have to work to think.
Yes, sir.
Well, again, if you've been conditioned over the last 5 decades to pray about everything and you haven't solved anything, you don't know nothing else to do.
Yes, sir.
You just don't. You just sit there, take turns praying. And here's another thing, Dr. Juice. For some reason, and I think it's the funniest thing, for some reason, there's some folks in your community feel like if I can say Bible verse like real fast, if I can say like 10 Bible verses under 30 seconds, that make me smart.
Wow.
I see these people go around, Matthew, John, and verse 12, and they say all these Bible verses in under a minute, and they want you to think that they want you to be impressed with that, and think that there's some sort of Rhodes Scholar because they can say 10 Bible verses in 30 seconds. Make that make sense to me.
That is that's a phenomenon, man. We may never get the answer to. You remember back in the days they had the owl with the lollipop,
Yeah.
and the little kid walked up to the say, "Mr. Owl, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a what was the name of the lollipop?" And the owl was like, "I don't know. Let's find out. 1, 2." Hey, by the time he got to that third one, boy, he had to chop that damn lollipop, and that lollipop was gone. So the world may never know, Professor. That was the whole message behind that. The world may never know because your licks and my understanding may be totally different. Your understanding may happen in a split second. My understanding may happen overnight or over the next year or so.
I will propose this to you in terms of change. And this has happened throughout our history, and I can cite you many examples, okay, in terms of your community, in terms of Black people. You're either going to change and make change, or you're going to be forced to change.
I think that's what's going to take.
I'll ask you a simple question, Dr. Juice. Real simple question. You used to have a pager, right?
Yep.
Why you don't use it no more?
Yeah, I had one.
Why you don't use it no more, Dr. Juice? Why?
Because technology got so advanced where it was obsolete. It played out. It played out. It got old. It went out of style.
Well, you know, talking to the people you talking about, they still dealing with pages.
It's still in pages.
So here's my point. Here's my point. Technology is going to force you to change. And this is where the roadkill comes in at. I'll give you an example. We're talking about digital robots. Now, in your community, you got a lot of PPP fraud going on in there. They're still outstanding. I don't mind talking about that. Government gonna get that money, and I'm gonna tell you how they're gonna do it. They're gonna have digital robots come at you. The IRS gonna have. They just spent billions of dollars modernizing the IRS.
Yep.
And they're gonna you're gonna have to deal with if your paperwork ain't together, if your stuff ain't lined up, you're gonna have to deal with a digital robot. That digital robot, it won't need to take no breaks. It runs 24/7. And until you satisfy the IRS, they're gonna lock your bank account. They're gonna shut you down until you make that robot happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The same reason
I've heard that too. Matter of fact, you're right.
The same reason why you don't use. There you go. All the middle class Americans. They're gonna use robots. Let me explain something to you, Dr. Juice. And this is for your public, man. And most, especially black people, don't understand this. If it wasn't for the pandemic, it would have taken us 5 to 8 years to be where we are today, technology-wise. Did that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
So then you say, well, Vaughn, where all these digital robots came from? I'll explain that. During the pandemic, we had to shut the country down, right? So when we shut the country down, when the country shut down, you still had operations, life essential operations that had to take place that was handled by human beings. What they did, because nobody knew how long that we were going to be shut down, they created digital robots to handle the task. That's why today, when you call customer service, when was the last time you were able to contact someone live at customer service direct? It's been a minute, right?
Been a minute.
You got to go through a whole menu process before you get to a human being, if it lets you do that. That's how the digital robots came about. Take a look at remote work. I've been doing remote work since 1995, so I understand remote work very well. But corporate America was against remote work for a long time because the mindset of management was they wanted to micromanage you. They want to sit there and watch you. So they were very reluctant to allow you to go home and work remote. Well, guess what? When the pandemic came, what did they do? Remote work. Now you take a place like Atlanta, where they have all those beautiful buildings that you see downtown Atlanta. Guess what, Dr. Juice? They empty. They can't get people to come back to work. So watch this, Dr. Juice. Watch this.
Wow.
All those beautiful buildings, all those buildings that they built downtown Atlanta, ain't nobody in them. Matter of fact, Atlanta downtown is just one big homeless shelter. Now, what do you think is gonna happen when those leases up and nobody want to go back in them buildings? What type of rippling effect you think that's gonna have? There you go. The USIS to hire 20,000.
You saying that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
But they're gonna use robot. That's not a big number.
Nope.
That's a force reduction because those 20,000 people they're going to use digital robots to augment their operation.
Absolutely.
So again, if you're still using a pager, how are you going to deal with that? This is what I mean by roadkill. How are you going to deal with that? So here's the question: If what you read, think about this. What I just sent you, right? The church. It was the church that built the educational institution in Lake Wells. It was the first Baptist missionary church. You read that. So my question is, do you believe in the state of education for black people? When you think about the public school system, do you think that is it still the church's responsibility to educate their community? Do you
Absolutely.
believe that to be? Oh, you do?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
At least that's what's supposed to be happening.
I mean, that's what they did. That's what they did in the past. That's what they did before we got sold this bad experiment. They did that. They were a big part of the community. After black people decided that the white folks had better water, along with the Jesus movement, they stopped educating their own. Because you just told me, listen what you just told me, Dr. Jude. You said that they don't do critical thinking in the church. That's what you said.
Absolutely.
You said that you showed me today, the only way that black people approach problem solving is through prayer. You said that.
Yep.
So what happened to the educational piece then? Why are they teaching critical thinking in the black church?
Because there's no critical thinkers in the black church. And they don't understand the importance of critical thinking.
So you don't think saying 10 Bible verses in 60 minutes or less than 60 seconds is critical thinking?
Nope. That's memory-based thinking. That is memory-based thinking. That's why they're miseducating our kids in school now. They're just wanting to teach a particular curriculum, and then they have them memorize that curriculum, and they call that learning. So to me, that's mind conditioning.
But you're telling me that it's the church's responsibility. And you know what? When I think about it, Juice, it can be done. When I think about the fact that I'm still asking you questions. So when you talk about utilization, I gave you a lecture on utilization the other day, cost utilization. So let's look at church utilization. So are those churches occupying those buildings? Because you got about 100 there in your community. So are they occupying? How often do the churches occupy the building throughout the week?
Once or twice. They're definitely not. They're just wasted real estate, if you ask me.
Okay, so you're telling me that the average church there only occupy the building twice a week?
Yes, sir. Some of them. I won't say all of them, but the majority of them only occupying it maybe once or twice a week.
So
Some of them once a week.
So can we say that the average church utilization rate would be less than 50%? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
That they use the church less than 50% of the time?
Less than 50%, yes.
All right, so let's say they only use it 46%. So now you got 60% of non-utilization. I'll tell you the way I think. My PhD work is in information system management. I know how to build systems. So why can't all those systems? Why can't all if you're not using those churches 60% of the time, why can't you use the 60% of the time of educating? You can wire they all. Well, I don't know about if y'all got internet access, but you can put internet access to those churches.
Sure could.
You know something?
That's what the white churches do.
That's what the Jewish people did in the
That's what the Jewish
synagogue.
Exactly.
So when you look at their educational model, think about what you know Jewish people as, right? If you want to really get out of jail, what you gonna do? You gonna go get you a Jewish lawyer.
Wow.
I'm gonna go get me a Jewish lawyer. You know
Wow.
why? Because those people make studying law their culture. Or you're gonna get a Jewish doctor. Is what you're gonna get. So I can't understand for the life of me if we're only using 40% of our real estate and technology is at a point where we can strategically implement our own educational system. I can't understand the life of me. Why aren't we looking at that as a solution? I don't understand why when we have these gatherings, why couldn't all the churches just get together and consolidate? Why couldn't they just get together and consolidate their resources for one common cause? I don't understand why that. I just don't understand why that's so impossible to do. You know, this whole silo approach, this whole silo approach to try to solve problems. I don't see how that is a viable solution to
Wow.
viable solution to community problems. I don't see it. Let
I
me
don't
ask,
see it either, Professor.
let me ask you another. I got plenty of questions. Now watch this. Watch this. Right now, watch this, Dr. Juice. So you had all these people praying and talking to God and doing the stuff they do on Lincoln Avenue, right?
Right.
Guess what's going to happen next? Everybody going to go to their own church.
Wow.
Make that make sense. Everybody was there. Nobody that was praying, they don't even go to the same church.
Right.
And as far as black people, you got what, 28% of you got 28% of 17,000. So you got
That's another thing that I never understood about our community. Like, why do we need so many churches? Because everybody wants to be a leader.
real
Everybody wants to be a leader, but don't know how to lead. It's too many churches in this community, and that makes the case even worse. Like, with all these churches, y'all still can't come up with a proactive, comprehensive solution to address this crime, to address this poverty, to address this undereducation in the community, miseducation in the community. I just don't understand it. Like I think you was mentioning the other day when we had this crisis in the community, how if this was a white community or some of the other communities in America, how they have grief counselors on the scene, on the grounds,
Yeah.
and we don't have any grief counselors. You didn't even have any pastors or preachers to try to come. Now I'm not saying I'm not. They didn't go and comfort those families. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying is it's like it's the same repeated madness and repeated cycle over and over again where nobody is being accountable in the community. It's like I think, like you say, Professor, we want to turn to prayer all the time because being accountable is too hard. Coming up with some solutions, putting our money where our mouth is too hard because. And I think you was you was on a broadcast today with me. I think I shared this uh, conference call that I was on with some gentlemen, and they were speaking of highly of technology in our black communities, how we can start doing this. But he showed that we got over almost $1.2 trillion of spending power. So it's not that we don't have the money; we just don't direct our dollars properly. We don't manage our money the correct way. We don't invest that money into us, into our community, because we got the ability. Because man, I see jokers going buy $10,000 rims and put them on a $1,500 car. That's the most stupid investment I mean, that's a waste of money. I think a waste of funds. And you mean to tell me we don't have $50? Like, say for instance, we have this broadcast. You and I, we're putting our time and energy in these broadcasts. What would be wrong with us taking up an offering for our special guest tonight, Professor Voss? Why couldn't we take up an offering? And that's called investing into your community, showing your appreciation for our professor sharing his higher education with us and giving that, investing that back in that community. Why can we take up an offering for you sometime, or take up an offering for Urban Matters Matter live chat? See, that's what the other communities do. That's what the white community, the Jewish communities, they have communication apparatuses that they invest in. And that's why these newspapers, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, that's why these newspapers are around so long, because they get the funding and the financing from their community. We know for a fact the dollar stays in the black community 1 hour after it comes into our community, it leaves our community. As soon as we get paid. When you go to other communities, the Asian community, the Asian community, their dollar bounces in their community 15 days. The Spanish community, about 10 to 12 days. The Jewish community, their dollar bounces in their community over 23 days. It bounces in their community before it leaves their community. You come to us, $1. I mean, 1 hour. Explain that, Professor.
Well,
how do we not know how to manage our money properly?
Here's what baffles me. We grew up in the same neighborhood. I'm 3Ds. I'm across the highway.
Okay.
And I've
in the building.
But here's what kills me. I'm teaching people overseas. I'm teaching people in Europe. I'm teaching people in Asia. They're paying me for the same conversation I'm having with you, and it's free. I hate to say free, but that's what it is. That's why I sell firewood. When I sell firewood so I can do these things with you. It ain't free. It's not free to put these infrastructures up. It's not free to pay for these digital tools that allow us to do the research, the communication, making an effort to have our own independent media outlet. That ain't free.
No, sir.
But I don't ask black folks for no money. I don't want to hear it. That's why I sell firewood. I don't even want to hear it, man.
You see all this technology I got in here, man?
It's beautiful.
Let me give y'all another camera view, man. I spent thousands of dollars to put this broadcast together for y'all.
Yeah.
So that
show them to it. Show them what it looks
we can have a media apparatus. Let me see if I can show them here, Professor. Give y'all another view.
The people over here, my community consider me, I'm trash. But one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's awesome.
I mean, we got a whole studio in here for y'all, man.
Wow.
I'm telling you, I can show you the screens I have. I have over. Let me see if I can get this camera right here to view it. No, I don't want to mess with that one. Let me see if I can get this one here to view it. Show y'all the whole setup, man, we got in here, man. And I did this for us, man. For us. This for us, man. This is a whole studio I got in here, man. Multiple screen setups, multiple angles, camera angles. And like I said, I did this all for us, man.
But you know what?
We have some type of media platform that puts us first. That's one thing about Urban Matters Media Group, man. We let everybody else hold their own nuts, man. We don't go to cheerleading for all these other groups, man. We don't have the time for it. We just don't, man. So,
but here's the thing. What you just showed, and this, I don't know how black people understand that, but that's expected of you from your ancestors. Imagine this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that with all of these things that you put together to further our culture, and there's no appreciation for it. Think about your ancestors. Think about the pain, and suffering. They talk about how Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins and all of this kind of mess. What did your ancestors do? Look at the things that your ancestors got. They got hung for you. They got murdered for you. They got raped for you. They were oppressed for you. And you won't even call their name. You won't even acknowledge the people that put their lives down on the line for you. That was beat and murdered. But you start screaming about how Jesus died on the cross. Make that make sense?
All I know, Professor, is that we got a long journey ahead of us, man. You would think we would have learned by now to be more innovative, to be more suggestive, to be more grassroots. But man, like I say, I just got off a conversation with some guys, and they talking just as stupid as we was talking 50 years ago. I mean, self-destruction mode. I mean,
Well, let me
they
just say, let me tell you where you're at. I'm gonna make it real simple. From a digital transformation perspective for Black people, you're gonna either have to adapt or you're gonna die.
gonna die.
So there's no middle road. You will die financially. You will die socially. You will die politically.
I believe.
That's and you'll be roadkill. And guess what?
Roadkill.
I'm a military man. You know what the government calls that? The government they calculate this. They call it attrition. They call you're gonna be a casualty of economic war.
Mm-mm-mm.
And they've already projected how many Black folks they're gonna lose. That's why they're focusing on the third graders. They growing. It's like farming. They growing a new crop. You're an old crop. You're a damaged crop. You've been damaged.
Wow.
You serve no purpose to society. As far as the government is concerned, from my perspective, that's why they focus on the third graders, Dr. Juice.
Wow.
Our boys, it hurts me. It hurts me to see this. It's very painful.
Man.
But let me tell you about our boys. They building more jails for them, and they're privatizing. So you talk about nigga, you're gonna be a nigga on the stock market.
Absolutely.
I just spoke to five of them in the jail down in Alabama. 5 of them, they all got capital murder cases, bro. What you gonna do with them?
Wow.
5 of them got capital murder, and they wear it like an honor badge. Bro, I got 3 capital murders, nigga. That is something to be proud of.
They wear it like a badge of honor.
Yes. So they're gonna house them. When you look at it, when I look at least, if it took 5 generations, it's probably gonna take 5 more. But when I look at that jail pipeline, when I look at that incarceration pipeline,
school to jail, school to prison pipeline. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, school to prison. Well, it ain't even school to prison. It's off the street. They ain't even in school. They're going straight to the pipeline. And these guys, most Black people don't know, they're building jails right now that you don't even know about. So
yeah, one of my brothers, man, we were having that conversation today. One of my good brothers, Sensation, smart young brother, man. That's my guy, man. A lot of people don't know this guy's smart and intelligent as he is because he kind of keeps to himself, and he doesn't mess with a lot of people. And he's out there on the road doing trucking, and he has a lot of properties he's buying up internationally. He's taking his money and investing in it. And that's why I can say this gentleman is very, very intelligent young man. And we was having that discussion about some of the laws that the Democrats put into place, which is the 1994 crime bill that Bill Clinton signed, that Joe Biden authored and wrote that bill. And that's the reason why, I ain't gonna say reason why, but that's the high percentage of the reason why a lot of our young men are right now in prison with lifetime sentences for minor drug offenses and what have you. And they are right now suffering financially, economically. Has caused our culture and our group to get behind in America because of the incarceration of a lot of the black males and the fathers and the brothers and the uncles and all of that. And me and this gentleman, we was having a conversation about some more guys that I was talking to. They say that the black people are the ones who demanded that they put the 1995 in action and in law. And I told them, no, brother, that was a lie. Now, you did have some boulets that they also always trying to say that our leaders, the for sorority, fraternity, sci-fi pie, I think that's the name of this. But that's your boulets, them your Obamas, them your Kamalas, them your Hidden Boule. A lot of the AKAs, they belong to that sorority, that group. It's actually a black leadership group that the liberals put in power to keep the masses of black people under control. You got your Benjamin Crumps, you know, a lot of times Benjamin Crump comes out and gets these settlements whenever there's black death in our communities by the hands of law enforcement, and he wants to play like he's some type of civil rights hero and advocate, but he's not. He's what you call a settlement attorney. He's not a civil rights attorney. Him and the other guy, what is his name? Lee Merritt. And they come out and get black people all in their emotion and get us some emotional crack. And then the George Floyd bill, by the way, never was passed. The Democrats brought it out, and they were in power in the Congress. They had the full control of the Congress, but they did not pass that George Floyd bill. So me and the guy, we was talking about how our people are just delusional when it comes to civil rights and getting ahead. We think that we're getting ahead, but the whole time the liberals got you thinking that you're winning, but the whole time you're losing because they just making you have that feel good about yourself, and they work off emotions, and they never offer any tangible solutions, kind of like prayer. And we're discussing today that prayer really doesn't give any tangible right away solutions. And I don't know why we don't see that, but we're going to have to pivot to some other type of tangible approach when it comes to crisis in our community, Professor.
Yeah, I mean, you might want to try critical thinking. You know,
Absolutely.
you
Well,
can start there, but I want to talk about. You talked about emotions, right? And you were talking about voting, and I want to emphasize the fact of the emotion that being used to manipulate black people into voting. Number one, I would never in a lifetime vote for no Joe Biden. People don't know Joe Biden is he's the Hitler of black people. He came up with the term of calling our boys super predators.
super predators. I remember that.
Joe Biden I would never vote for Joe Biden at all.
Yeah.
Here's the
Yeah.
other thing. And I don't care who wins. I really don't. I don't care who wins. But here's the thing.
No, we don't. But they automatically think you. If you say something about Joe Biden, that means you like Trump. That's how slow our people is. That's how they lack the critical thinking. That show you right there. They don't have any critical thinking skills, because who would come up with some type of lame brain idea like that?
I can tell you that. I can tell you. I'm gonna tell you right now, dude. Here's the emotion. When you talk about emotion, but you didn't say the emotion. I'll tell you again, for black people,
Wow.
the emotion that was used to manipulate black people was fear. Fear. You got to fear the Lord. You got to fear Christ. You're scared of this. You're scared of that. I'm scared what they might do to me. I'm scared that I might lose my job. If I get on Facebook Live and I start saying things that these folks don't like, I'm gonna get canceled. Somebody gonna call my boss. They're probably trying to find somebody now to call to fire Gary Voss. You talking to my boss now. Call me if you want me fired. I have to fire myself because I make my own money. But is that fear, Dr. Juice? Is that fear that's been used to manipulate us? So rather than us demanding what we want, we're making decisions out of fear. We scared that something gonna happen to us. So we
Absolutely.
scared.
Absolutely.
We don't listen, watch this now. Watch this. If you had the ability to critically think, it wouldn't be nothing to be afraid of. How about
Nothing.
that? There'd be nothing
Absolutely
to be
nothing.
afraid of if you could think. But since you don't think, since you don't have the capacity to critically think, then it's easy for someone to scare you because you're not going to investigate. You're not going to explore. You're going to take what's for face value that's put in front of you, and you're scared.
Yep. Yes, sir.
So the first thing you got to do is get black folks to overcome what I call oppressive phobia. In other words, you've been conditioned to be afraid of everything. Ku Klux Klan. Think about how they used the Klan to terrorize black people. You know, I think you was telling me about your granddaddy or your daddy when you asked him what happened. He said, boy, them people, man, them people are hanging you, boy. They'll hang you by the high street. That's fear. And I'm definitely not marginalizing what my ancestors went through because they had no other choice, especially when you got the police on the side of terrorists. You see, law enforcement was part of that. That's why one of the reasons why I partnered with my homeboy and got deep into law enforcement because in order for you to govern yourself, you got to be part of the system. We need to train our boys. We need to give them a better option. Nobody's talking about how do we put these boys and give them an option so they can be a part of the system and they can govern their own community. Every time you got an issue, you got white folks coming down there beating your ass. Why can't you govern yourself, Dr. Juice? Why can't you start help educating some of these young black boys to be a part of the system? But if prayer is the only thing that you're going to offer them, they're not going to even show up.
No, sir.
You had a bunch of mammoth type mentalities down there. That's not going to attract. That's not going to attract no young soldier. I can't wait to see our numbers. I know our young soldiers watch us. I know what the numbers
We
going to
definitely
be. I
need
know that they're
soldiers,
listening.
man. Yep, we
You
need
can't build
soldiers, man.
soldiers
We
with
need
prayer.
that, like you say.
You can't build soldiers with prayer. You scared. You praying that something happen. Well, you're praying that something won't happen.
All you're doing is creating another generation of buck broken Negroes and mammy, a lot of mammyism. Yes, sir,
Um,
no, sir.
you got a
You know,
mammy culture in that place, boy.
listen, I was having a conversation with some ladies the other day, and a lot of these ladies are business owners. They're entrepreneurs and business owners. And one thing that all of them had in common and relative when I asked them, how do they feel about speaking freely when they're at public functions and different things in the county and the community? And they said that they have a sense of pride and a sense of courage because they're not being controlled by their masters, their jobs. They're not controlled by somebody holding the a knife to their throat, or they don't have to walk around on eggshells when they speak, and they can speak from the heart, and they can speak from their soul and from their essence, and not be afraid to speak because their hands are not tied by their job or their community, and that's like a lot of our faith-based institutions like the Black Church. You are part of that faith-based initiative, that FBI initiative that Granddaddy Bush enacted to make you tax exempt. And because you're tax exempt, that means you're controlled. Your speech is controlled. Your sermons are controlled. The message that you have in your church is controlled, and you are conditioned by the government. And so this is why a lot of our people can't really speak to what's happening in our communities on a truthful level, because they have to water everything down, or they have to whitewash it down because of their tax exempt status.
That goes back to the fear. Fear is a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
Fear, I'll give you another one. Deprivation.
Yes.
Financial, economic deprivation.
Depriving us.
Right. So your boys, what option? You know, you're down there praying, but what option? What tangible option are you offering these young men outside of what they're doing? What? What option?
Nothing at all.
That's all.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Yep. You're absolutely right, Professor. And then again, we thank you again, Professor. We got to wrap it up because we got another little conference call I got to be a part of. But I definitely enjoyed every minute of your lecture tonight. And we thank you for your insight. We thank you for your graceful, intelligent, intellectual knowledge, Professor. And we're going to continue this conversation later this week, maybe earlier this week, maybe tomorrow, because I have some time available tomorrow too. I'm gonna be out of town for a few days doing some projects I'll be working on, and I should have those finished up by the end of the week. So we're gonna keep coming and bring you this hot fire, man, on here on Urban Matter Live chatting. I'm your gracious host, Dr. Juice. We got our faithful, humble servant, the professor, chopping up that heavy fire game for us. He putting it in an educational way, but he putting it into a must-have way that the Black community, especially Black men, man, we love to hear this from you, Professor, because it's very rare we have a master teacher like yourself in the Black community that can relay this information to us and don't mind giving us this intellectual thought and making us more critically thinking and keeping us more critically responsible and accountable for our community. And you don't know what you're doing. You're breeding a whole new Black man. You got that Black man in your laboratory, and you putting him together like the bionic Black man. And we got to thank you for that, Professor. We thank you for that. Peace and love. We love y'all. Remember.
That's it up.
Stay Black and talk Black to me. Stay Black and talk Black to me. One love.